and in recognizing that if we're going to do this in a bipartisan way, we're going to have to impress the members of Congress within your cities and within your state. Of course, recruiting your members doesn't apply, of course, to Governor Sanford, which I would suggest that you can leave your members alone and tell them to stay at home. But having said that, Governor, do you recognize our nation is going through a severe fiscal crisis at this time? And do you agree that the likes of which has never been seen since the Great Depression?
Absolutely.
Do you believe that there's any role for the federal government to play as it relates to the fiscal institutions, since you oppose the $700 billion recovery? Do you think that we should have given any financial assistance to these institutions at all?
I personally don't. If you look at our numbers, in terms of, it's interesting, the latest issue of...
No, that's good for me, because a lot of people should, you don't believe we should have any responsibility exposing the taxpayer to anything as relates to that problem.
Well, no, they're already exposed.
But you would not have supported that.
I wouldn't support adding to that exposure, which is the nature of borrowing when you're already in the hole. I mean, the old saying is, if you're in a ditch, you know, part of the quickest way to get out is to quit digging.
Do the people in South Carolina, have you felt the increase in unemployment at all?
Absolutely,
South Carolina?
Absolutely, as has the rest of the nation. But the issue goes back to this larger notion. I have a chart here that shows household debt as a percentage. Today we're at 100%.
You said federal intervention was infectious, and that's kind of rough language. It affects our economy with unnecessary and unintended fiscal consequences. And so I just want to see whether there's anything that we can do as a government that you would agree makes some sense. Now, with the unemployment, would you support unemployment compensation for these people that are unemployed in South Carolina?
We have obviously a program in place. The question is, should we add to it?
I know you. I'm just asking. I don't want to be offensive and infect anything that relates to your concept of your government.
Sure.
And so, therefore, I want to make certain that, is there anything that we can do that you agree? Unemployment compensation, expanded, modernization, picking up those people who are looking for work and can't find it. Should the federal government look at that? Forget stimulus. Should we do it? Should we be involved in Medicaid and Medicare? Should we be involved in assisting in getting people an education, training, and being competitive? Should we do anything that would allow us to be competitive to get out of the fiscal mess that we're in, that you would agree is the proper role for government?
Sure. And that's why I made the last point that I made, which is there are a whole series of unfunded federal mandates at the state level
that run us about 400. That we made on your watch and my watch. We're looking ahead now.
Mr. Chairman, why don't you let him answer your questions?
Hello?
So, in other words, there are, I mean, very substantial unfunded mandates.
Well, he's talking about unfunded mandates. You can't put that in a stimulus package. The gentleman from Georgia, if
the chairman will yield, I think what he said was he's not in favor of another stimulus package because all of these things could be more helpful. To get rid of the unfunded mandates, they can help it themselves.
Well, I heard what he said. I don't have a hearing problem. I just want to be able, as the chair, to get answers to my questions and not answers to questions I did not ask.
Mr. Chairman, if you'll yield further, the point I made was, if you want answers to your questions, let him answer them.
Do you support, thank you to the gentleman for his direction, do you support the federal unemployment compensation program?
I do. We have obviously a program in place.
Do you support expanding that program?
I don't. In other words, I would expect...
That answers me, Governor. We don't have the problem that he thinks we have. That answers it. Do you support any federal assistance for infrastructure, bridges, roads, schools? Do you think the federal government should be involved at all?
The federal government is involved.
I mean, do you think we should continue to be involved? I don't want to get involved in unintended mandates.
The details matter here, because, again, I go back to the basic reality, which is you got to differentiate between investment and borrowing to invest. The federal government...
I don't have a problem, Governor, with my question. Do you think the federal government should be involved in assisting and providing health care for the people in South Carolina?
Obviously, because we administer Medicaid, which is a federal state program that helps a lot of people in South Carolina.
Well, what makes you think the federal government should have that obligation to take care of the health care to people in South Carolina?
You're changing the words. You said, should the government be involved versus should we, again, expand that obligation? In other words, the two are different. We have a program. It is unsustainable. It's been growing at 9.5%, 10% a year over the last 10 years. And the question going forward, and this is the larger point that David Walker and Pete Peterson and a whole host of others are making, which is if you have $52 trillion of accumulated liability, of political promises that have been made but not paid for, ultimately, just as was the case with the homeowner whose house ultimately became underwater from a credit standpoint,
how about national
somebody's
disasters?
got
Should
to
you be
pay
involved
for it.
in tornadoes, floods, and hurricanes? You think the federal government should be there for the people in the states at all?
Again, federal government is.
I'm asking, do you think they should be? We are. Do you think we should be?
Well, no, you're not asking the question that, again, I'm
so
making,
sorry.
which is...
The chair apologizes for not framing the question, but you can answer. I yield to Mr. McCrary.